Welcome back for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be exploring something that has fascinated thinkers for centuries,
Mm-hmm.
the art of memory.
Ooh, this is a good one.
It is. We'll be using Francis Yates's book, The Art of Memory, to help us trace how this art evolved
Right.
from ancient Greece and Rome all the way through to the Middle Ages and the Renaissance.
Wow, it's a long history.
Yeah, it's a really long history.
Yeah.
And we want to give you a good picture of how this art developed,
Yeah.
its connections to influential figures, philosophies,
Okay.
and even, get this, architecture.
Huh, that's interesting. I'm really looking forward to this. The art of memory. It's so fascinating how it began as just like a simple technique,
Right.
but it really evolved into a whole system with like profound philosophical and even spiritual implications.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start by going back to the very beginning.
Okay.
Ancient Greece
Sounds good.
with Simonides of Chios
Oh, yeah. Samoani's.
and the infamous banquet story. Have you heard this story?
I have. It's quite a tale.
Yeah. So Simonides was at this banquet and suddenly the roof collapses.
Oh, no.
Yeah, total disaster.
So what happened?
Well, everyone inside was crushed, tragically,
Oh, my goodness.
and they were left unrecognizable. It was just horrible. But Simonides, though, because he could remember where each guest was sitting,
Oh, wow.
he was able to actually identify all the bodies.
That's incredible. So, like a memory superpower emerging from this really tragic event.
Exactly. And this story became like a foundation myth for the whole art of memory.
Makes sense. So, what did they actually do? What was their technique?
Well, it emphasized using visualized places, like locations that you can picture in your mind. They call these loci.
Okay, Losa.
And then vivid images, which they called imagines,
Okay.
to remember things.
So, how does that work?
Imagine this. You're mentally placing items, things you need to remember, around a familiar location, like let's say your home.
Oh, okay, I see.
Each room, every piece of furniture becomes a locus, holding an image of a fact or idea that you want to remember.
Ah, that's smart. So, it's like a mental map, but instead of marking locations, you're marking memories.
Exactly. And you know what? This technique wasn't just for, like, remembering tragic events or whatever.
Hmm?
Roman orators, like Cicero and Quintilian,
Oh, the famous orators.
yeah, they actually used it to memorize their speeches.
Makes sense. They needed to remember all those arguments and points.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Hmm.
They considered it essential for rhetoric, the art of persuasion.
Right. Rhetoric.
They actually believed a well-structured speech, one that's anchored within a memory palace,
Okay.
could actually captivate audiences
Interesting.
and help win arguments.
Yeah. And, a strong memory was such a valuable tool back then. I mean, this was before readily available notes and things like that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But it wasn't just about speeches, though.
Oh, really?
There was this guy, Metrodorus of Sepsis.
Metrodora.
Yeah, he used the zodiac
The Zodiac for memory was?
as his memory framework.
Wow, that's where it starts to feel like a little more mystical, don't you think?
Yeah,
Like, what was he
it
thinking?
really does. So, I mean, Metrodorus's approach kind of exemplifies how the art of memory really started to, like, intertwine with these broader intellectual and spiritual currents.
Right, I see what you mean.
So the zodiac, right, representing cosmic order, kind of suggests that memory techniques, like, weren't just practical tools.
Yeah, okay.
They were seen as ways to understand the universe, like maybe even for divination.
Yeah.
Whoa. So the human mind, through memory, could, like, mirror the universe.
That's pretty powerful.
It is. And this connection, like, becomes even stronger in the Middle Ages
Really?
when memory gets tied to prudence.
Prudence.
Yeah, one of the four cardinal virtues.
Oh, okay. So for thinkers like Albertus Magnus and Thomas Aquinas, training your memory wasn't just like a good idea. It was an ethical responsibility,
Oh, wow.
a pathway to cultivate wisdom and live a virtuous life.
Mm-hmm.
So remembering things went from being practical to morally good. Pretty much, it was about aligning your mind with the divine order.
Wow. That's fascinating. So how did this affect the actual techniques?
Well, it had a huge impact on the imagery that was used in mnemonic techniques. Think about those depictions of virtues and vices in medieval art.
Okay, yeah.
Often so vivid, even grotesque.
Yeah, they are.
Those intense depictions, like they were meant to stick with you. And they might have been influenced by this need to create memorable, even unsettling images to embody abstract concepts.
Huh. Interesting. They call them corporeal similitudes, right?
Corporeal similitudes, right?
Huh.
Corporeal similitudes. So from a survival skill to a moral imperative, the art of memory takes quite a journey. Where does it go from there?
Well, the Renaissance was a turning point.
Okay.
You had this explosion of memory treatises offering all sorts of new approaches.
Really? Like what?
Some systems stuck with architectural models.
Right, like Albertus Magnus.
Yeah, exactly. But others went in a totally different direction.
Oh.
They ventured into more cosmic realms, embracing things like planetary symbolism and Hermetic philosophy.
Hermetic philosophy.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I'm curious about that. Can you explain a little bit more about Hermeticism?
Well, it was all about this, like, quest for a deeper understanding of the universe
Okay.
and humanity's place within it. It often incorporated astrology,
Right.
alchemy, and this belief in the interconnectedness of all things.
Sounds pretty influential.
Oh, it was. It had a huge impact on Renaissance thinkers,
Yeah.
including Giulio Camillo.
Camillo. He's the one with the famous memory theater, right?
Yeah, exactly. It was legendary.
Can see why it sounds like a fascinating and incredibly complex system.
Oh, it was. Imagine a physical structure,
Okay.
like a wooden theater filled with images
Wow.
arranged according to planetary influences.
So like the stars.
Yeah, and imbued with all these hidden meanings.
That's wild. What was he trying to do with it?
Well, he intended it as like a physical embodiment of the universe itself.
Whoa. That's ambitious.
It really was.
Yeah.
Designed to unlock the secrets of memory and knowledge.
So he believed that by arranging these images and symbols in this specific way,
Right.
you could actually access this like vast network of interconnected ideas.
Exactly. He believed that proper arrangement was key.
Amazing. Camillo's memory theater sounds incredibly ambitious, but he wasn't the only one developing memory systems at this time.
Oh, no, not at all. What about Ramon Llull?
Oh, right. Ramon Llull, he had a very different approach, didn't he?
Yeah, his system was based on divine attributes and these things called combinatory diagrams.
Combinatory diagrams. So
Yeah.
less about visualizing spaces and more about like combining and exploring concepts.
Yeah, exactly. He created this system with rotating wheels and symbols.
Really?
He saw it as a tool for understanding God
Interesting.
and converting people to Christianity.
Wow, very different from Camillo's memory theater. So we have these two distinct systems. Camillo's system grounded in Hermeticism, using spatial visualization, and then Lowell's system focusing on divine attributes and these combinatory diagrams. Did anyone try to bring these together?
Oh, yeah. Lots of Renaissance thinkers were captivated by the idea of, like, merging Lowell's system with the classical art of memory.
Like a hybrid approach? What were they hoping to achieve?
Well, they thought they could create this, like, occult memory. They believed it could unlock extraordinary mental powers
Extraordinary mental power.
and offer, like, deep spiritual insights.
Occult memory. Now that sounds intriguing. This whole exploration of memory is taking us to some really unexpected places.
I know, it really is. And things are about to get even more fascinating as we delve deeper into the Renaissance.
Oh, who are we going to meet next?
We're going to meet a figure who really pushed the boundaries of the art of memory.
I can't wait.
Giordano Bruno.
Giordano Bruno. He was a fascinating and controversial figure, wasn't he?
Oh, absolutely.
A Renaissance philosopher, Dominican friar.
Yeah.
He really embraced Hermeticism, and developed this memory system incorporating zodiacal imagery and what some people considered to be magical techniques.
It sounds like he was really pushing the boundaries of what people thought about memory back then. Like, his system sounds almost mystical. What were
Right.
some of the specific techniques he advocated?
Well, it was a complex mix of ideas. He believed that if you structured images and symbols in the right way, they could help the individual tap into like universal knowledge, divine power, things like that. He actually laid out these ideas in several books.
Oh, really? Like what?
Shadows, seals, books like that filled with intricate symbolism and occult themes.
Okay. So what were some of the reactions to his methods? Were they widely accepted?
Well, Bruno's ideas were definitely controversial.
I can imagine. Especially when you compare it to, like, the REMIS memory techniques that were also gaining popularity at the time.
Right, Remism. It emphasized a much more structured, logical approach to memory, really focusing on clear organization and categorization.
Okay, so it was seen as more rational, less magical.
Yeah, I think so, aligning more with that emerging scientific mindset.
So there was this clash between these two approaches to memory. Bruno's was emphasis on the occult,
Right.
hidden knowledge, and then the Ramist approach, which was
Good.
much more about, like, logic and organization.
Yeah, and this tension reflects a much broader shift that was happening in the intellectual landscape of the time. Bruno's emphasis on Hermeticism, it represented this continuation of Renaissance thought, embracing those esoteric traditions, seeking those deep connections between the human mind and the divine. But Ramism, with its focus on reason and systematic organization, that really foreshadowed the coming rise of the scientific revolution.
That's really fascinating. It's like these two approaches to memory were microcosms of a much larger societal shift
Yeah.
in how people view knowledge, how they viewed the world. But before we get too far ahead, let's circle back to this idea of occult memory. You mentioned it earlier. It sounds both intriguing and honestly a little bit risky. What were those who pursued this occult memory hoping to achieve?
Well, think back to figures like Giulio Camillo and Giordano Bruno. They truly believed that by using these specific techniques, visualizing images, using symbols, tacking into planetary influences,
Right.
they could actually unlock this hidden knowledge and maybe even influence the world around them.
Wow.
It was a quest for power, yeah, but also a deeper understanding of the universe and humanity's place within it.
So occult memory wasn't just about remembering facts and figures. It was about tapping into this whole other realm of knowledge and, like you said, maybe even influencing reality. It's a far cry from those simple memory techniques used by the ancient orators.
It is. And that ambition, that desire to push beyond the boundaries of conventional knowledge, is what made occult memory both fascinating and controversial. It's a reminder that the art of memory has always been about more than just practicality. It's been a reflection of how we as humans have sought to understand ourselves and our place in the world.
Yeah, and the potential of our own minds. As we continue exploring the art of memory, it's crucial to remember that broader context. But for now, let's shift our focus a bit to Elizabethan England, a period known for its vibrant literary and theatrical scene.
Oh, yes, Elizabethan England.
So how did the art of memory manifest during this era?
Well, it played a crucial role in the world of theater, especially with playwrights like Shakespeare. I mean, think about it.
Yeah,
Actors had to remember and deliver these incredibly lengthy and complex dialogues, all without the use of written scripts. It was a real feat of memory.
I can imagine. So was the theater itself like a giant memory palace?
You could say that with its various stages and locations, it really did serve as like loci for storing and retrieving lines.
So the Globe Theater, where Shakespeare's plays were performed, that was like a memory palace. That's quite a visual. Were there any other examples of this connection between memory and the Elizabethan theater?
Definitely. This relationship between memory and theater was made even more explicit in the work of Robert Flood. Remember him?
Yeah, the Hermetic philosopher.
Yes. He actually incorporated a memory theater into his system, and it closely resembled the Globe Theater's architecture.
Wait, the actual Globe Theater?
Yeah, the one where they performed Shakespeare's plays. Flood's memory theater had a stage, galleries, even a heavens above,
Mm.
all adorned with zodiacal imagery. It's almost as if he saw the theatrical space as a blueprint for how to organize and access knowledge.
Wow, that's an incredible connection. It really suggests that those ancient memory techniques were woven into the very fabric of Elizabethan theater. It's amazing to think that the same principles that helped orators remember speeches may have also helped actors embody some of the most iconic characters in English literature. But as much as I love exploring these historical connections, I'm curious, how did the art of memory fare as we moved into the age of reason, of scientific discovery?
That's a great question, and it brings us to like a turning point in this journey through the history of memory, the rise of the scientific revolution. It really ushered in a significant shift in how we acquire and value knowledge.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Empirical observation, experimentation, logical reasoning, all those things became super important. And, Francis Bacon, a key figure in this scientific transformation, he actually critiqued the art of memory.
Oh, really?
He thought it relied too much on artificial systems
Mm-hmm.
and that it had the potential to distort reality.
Interesting. So he was basically saying, move away from the memory palace and embrace the laboratory.
Pretty much. He advocated for a much more grounded approach to knowledge, one based on direct observation and careful experimentation.
Did he see any value in memory techniques at all? Or was he totally against them?
Well, while Bacon was critical of the art of memory, worried it might mislead,
Hmm.
he wasn't completely dismissive of it. He did acknowledge that it could be valuable for organizing information, retaining it,
Okay.
especially for scientific purposes, as long as it was stripped of its mystical and occult aspects.
So it sounds like the art of memory faced a sort of reckoning during the scientific revolution. It lost some of its, mystical allure, but it still held on to a degree of practicality, especially when applied to these burgeoning scientific fields.
Right.
So Did it have any lasting influence on how we think about knowledge today?
Absolutely. While those elaborate memory palaces might have fallen out of favor, the basic principles of the art of memory, using visual imagery,
Right.
creating connections, establishing order, those have continued to inform modern approaches to learning and memory. These principles are still very much alive in our educational systems, even in our everyday lives.
That makes sense. I mean, those techniques are relevant even today.
Right.
Even if we're not memorizing epic poems or building elaborate mental architectures, it's like the core of the art of memory has endured, adapted to this ever-changing intellectual landscape. But before we move on, I want to go back to Bacon's critique for a moment.
Mhm.
That idea that the art of memory could lead to distortion. That seems especially important to consider given that we've been talking about systems that delve into like the realm of the occult.
I see your point. It highlights a tension that's run through the entire history of the art of memory.
Right.
On the one hand, it's this powerful tool,
For sure.
organizing, retrieving information.
Hmm.
But on the other hand, it relies on these subjective images, associations, things that can be manipulated or lead to biased interpretations.
Yeah. And that tension becomes even more pronounced with those occult memory systems we talked about earlier.
Definitely. I mean, think about it. Planetary symbolism,
Right.
Hermetic philosophy, claims of like magical technique. It's all fascinating.
Yeah,
But it raises these questions about validity and potential for misinterpretation.
absolutely. The big question is,
Hmm.
are these systems really tapping into some kind of hidden knowledge, like real mental powers?
Mm-hmm.
Or are they just elaborate mental constructs?
Yeah.
That could lead to misinterpretations or even delusion. It's something that people are still debating even today.
And, it's a question that goes beyond the art of memory. It speaks to the nature of knowledge itself, how we separate truth from falsehood, especially now in this world where we're constantly bombarded with information.
Yeah, from all sides. It seems like the art of memory has always walked this line
Mm-hmm.
between being a valuable tool for understanding
Right.
and a potential source of distortion.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It is. It's a fascinating paradox.
And it's a paradox that's still relevant today, as we navigate this world that's so saturated with information and as we try to figure out what's real and what's not. In a way, we're all engaging with the legacy of the art of memory.
That's a powerful thought. Every time we use a mnemonic device or a visual aid to remember something, we're tapping into those ancient principles.
We are. But as we wrap up this exploration of the art of memory,
I wonder if any of these ancient memory techniques are like still relevant today in our modern world. I mean, we have
Yeah.
Google, smartphones, all this technology. Do we even need memory palaces anymore?
Well, that's the really interesting part. In this age of information overload, the art of memory might be more relevant than ever. Not so much for storing tons of data, but for making those meaningful connections,
Right?
seeing patterns, cultivating a deep and lasting understanding of the information we're bombarded with.
So not about ditching technology,
Mm.
but using these old techniques to navigate the digital world.
Exactly. Think about how we learn and remember today. Visual aids, storytelling, creating those mental maps,
Right?
all echoes of the art of memory, just adapted for the digital age.
It really is fascinating how these techniques, developed in a world without computers or smartphones, still resonate with how we learn today.
Yeah.
But I can't help but think there's like something more to it.
Oh, like what?
Something beyond just like practical memory tricks. Like remember Bruno's concept of inner writing?
Yes. It wasn't just about storing information. It was about transforming yourself, forging this deeper connection
Mm-hmm.
with the universe through the power of your own imagination. Maybe there's a lesson in that for us today, in a world where technology, sometimes it feels like it disconnects us from our own inner lives.
That's a really profound thought. Maybe rediscovering this art of memory isn't just about remembering things. It's about like reclaiming our own minds,
Yeah.
cultivating a sense of wonder, of possibility in a world that can feel, you know, overwhelming, predetermined.
I think so. And who knows, maybe in rediscovering these ancient techniques, we'll rediscover a sense of agency, creativity, in a world that can often feel beyond our control.
That's definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
Well, I think that about wraps up our deep dive into the art of memory.
What a journey.
I know. We went from ancient Greece through the Renaissance and beyond, uncovering this history that's so rich, fascinating characters,
Mhm.
philosophical debates, and honestly, some surprisingly relevant insights for us today.
It's amazing how much we can learn from the past, isn't it? What are some of the things that stood out to you? Any threads you'll keep exploring on your own?
I know I will. And to all our listeners out there, we encourage you to go on your own memory adventures. Explore these techniques, experiment, see what works for you. You might just unlock something amazing within yourself.
You might, and maybe you'll rediscover the joy of learning, the beauty of connection, and the power of the human mind. Keep those mental muscles flexed, and until next time, happy remembering.